Welcome to our deep dive into Brené Brown's Dare to Lead.
Ooh, fun.
We've got a lot to cover, quotes, stories, even a few anecdotes about Steve.
Oh, Brené's husband.
Exactly, Steve, her husband.
Right.
And I know you're hoping to really get those core principles of daring leadership.
Absolutely.
Especially the ones that, resonate with your own experiences and values.
Yeah, and that's what we're here for.
Okay, so Brené kicks off Dare to Lead with this really funny story about a speaking gig where she totally misinterprets what a C-level audience means.
Oh, yeah.
Like she thought they were talking about C-level folks.
Like down-to-earth people?
Yeah, super down-to-earth people.
I love that.
I know.
That's such a great way to start the book because it really sets the tone for her whole approach.
Yeah.
It's not about being, untouchable.
Right.
It's about being relatable and recognizing the human element in everything.
Yes. And it also kind of hints at that rigorous research
Right.
that's behind her work.
Yeah, 20 years of data,
Yeah.
interviews with global leaders, program evaluations.
It's not just, feel-good stuff.
Exactly.
There's real substance.
There's real weight behind it.
And she calls the book a playbook.
I love that.
Which I love.
Me too.
Because it shows she really wants people to walk away with those tools.
Yeah.
Not just theories.
Yes.
But let's get into the core of it, this idea that courage is a skill, not a personality trait.
Fair.
It's vulnerability that forms that foundation.
And that's where her research gets so interesting.
Yeah.
She talks about the physics of vulnerability,
Okay.
meaning if you're going to be brave, you're going to fall.
You have to fall.
You have to be. Daring leaders understand this.
Yes.
They don't see it as a weakness.
Right.
It's inevitable.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
You said you struggle sometimes with speaking up in meetings, right?
I do, yeah. Sometimes I hold back because I worry about saying the wrong thing,
And that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And it connects to what Brené calls rumbling with vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming an open book.
Right. It's about understanding the nuances.
Yeah.
It's different from oversharing or emotional dumping.
Yes.
She even tells a story about a CEO who tried to be vulnerable and totally missed the mark.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
So how do we get better at rumbling with vulnerability?
Well.
Brené gives us some great tools like the Braving Inventory,
Yes.
which breaks down trust into 7 elements.
Uh-huh.
Boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault integrity, non-judgment, and generosity.
I love that.
And I think vault is especially relevant for you.
Oh, tell me more.
It's all about confidentiality and how easy it is to, for good intentions to actually break someone's trust.
Right. We often think confidentiality is simple,
Right.
but there are so many layers to it.
Yes.
Brené gives examples of situations where someone thought they were being supportive by sharing confidential information,
Right.
but they didn't have permission.
It didn't have permission.
And it eroded trust.
Yeah, and this inventory isn't just for judging others.
No, it's a great way to reflect on our own trustworthiness.
Exactly.
Like, how trustworthy am I?
Yeah. Am I showing up in a way that builds trust?
Exactly.
And that leads us to the next big piece, living into our values.
Okay.
And Brené makes it clear we don't have separate values for work and life.
Right.
The challenge is aligning them.
Aligning them, yeah.
And she has this exercise where you choose just 2 core values,
Oh, interesting.
which forces you to get really clear about what matters.
Yeah, what really matter.
And Brené's own core values are faith and courage.
I like that.
You can see how they influence all of her choices.
And it's fascinating how this connects to leadership.
Yeah.
She has a case study about Stefan Larsson, who revitalized Old Navy by bringing the brand back to its original values.
Wow.
It wasn't just about marketing.
Right.
It was about actions aligning with those core beliefs.
So thinking about your goal of building a more supportive team environment,
Yeah.
could choosing 2 core values for your team help?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I'm curious about how storytelling plays into all of this.
Okay.
Brené introduces this concept of shitty first drafts,
I love that term.
SFDs.
Yeah.
Those stories our brains create to make sense of things, especially when we don't have all the information.
And that's huge in the workplace.
It is.
Think about how much anxiety and gossip thrives when there's a lack of information.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Leaders can combat that by being transparent and acknowledging what they don't know.
And creating space for people to examine their own SFDs.
Yes, exactly.
Remember that story she tells about the ham incident?
Oh, yes.
It illustrates how recognizing her own SFD helped her de-escalate a conflict with Steve.
And you know what's really practical about the SFD tool?
Right.
Is it's not about suppressing those narratives.
Right.
It's about becoming aware of them.
being aware.
Yeah, and asking, what's the story I'm making up?
Yeah.
So often we jump to conclusions without even realizing.
Without even realizing.
And that awareness is so powerful.
Yeah.
It gives us the ability to choose a different story.
A more empowering story.
A more empowering one.
And that's where daring leadership really begins.
That's it.
So we're starting to see how vulnerability values and storytelling are all connected.
They're all intertwined.
They're all intertwined.
Yeah.
They lay the groundwork for stepping into the arena.
The arena.
As Brené calls it.
Yes.
But what happens when we inevitably face setbacks?
That's what we'll dig into next.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable with the messy middle.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, as Brené puts it.
Yeah.
And building the skills to navigate the falls we experience when we dare to lead.
When we dare to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about stepping into the arena.
Yes.
But Brené also spends a lot of time talking about what she calls armored leadership.
Okay.
It's all those ways we protect ourselves in the workplace,
Right.
but end up blocking real connection and effectiveness.
It's like those behaviors we fall back on.
Yeah.
When we're feeling insecure or afraid. Perfectionism, always needing to be right.
Right.
Numbing ourselves out with work or social media.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I've been guilty of that.
It's so common.
It is.
And Brené argues that these armored behaviors come from a fear of vulnerability.
Oh, interesting.
We're terrified of being seen as weak or unworthy.
Yeah.
So we build up these walls around ourselves.
Those walls might feel safe
Yeah.
in the moment, but they prevent us from being our authentic selves.
Exactly.
And I imagine it impacts our teams negatively, too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Brené talks about how armored leadership creates cultures of fear and silence.
Oh, wow.
Nobody wants to speak up or take risks.
Because they're worried about the consequences.
Exactly.
It's like everyone's walking on eggshells all the time.
Yeah.
Which just kills creativity and innovation.
It does.
So how do we break free from those armored patterns?
It's tough.
It feels like a really tough challenge.
It is. But Brené offers some really solid strategies.
Okay.
She encourages us to get curious about our own armor, to understand the fears and insecurities driving it.
To get to the root of it.
Yeah, like those shadow comforts she talks about.
Yes.
The things we cling to for temporary relief.
Right.
Even though they ultimately keep us stuck.
Yeah. So it's about recognizing those patterns.
Yes.
And finding healthier ways to deal with discomfort.
Exactly.
But what are some of those healthier ways?
Well, Brené talks about building a strong back and a soft front.
Okay.
It's a powerful metaphor.
What does that look like in practice?
Okay, so think of the strong back
Okay.
as your grounded confidence and clear boundaries.
Okay.
It's knowing your worth and what you stand for.
Okay, I'm with you.
The soft front is your willingness to be open and curious.
Even when things feel risky.
Even when things feel risky.
So it's not about being vulnerable or strong.
Right.
It's about being both.
It's about being both at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah. It takes courage to hold that tension.
It does.
And it leads us to another important piece.
Okay.
Power.
Power.
But not power over others.
Okay.
It's power with and power to.
I'm really interested in that distinction.
Yeah.
I think we often have negative associations with that word power.
I agree.
But Brené seems to see it as a positive force.
She does. For her, it's not about control or domination.
Okay.
It's about collaboration and empowerment.
I like that.
She gives some great examples of leaders using their power to drive positive change.
Can you share one that resonated with you?
One that comes to mind is a leader who gave their team the power to make decisions.
Wow.
They trusted their expertise and judgment.
Instead of micromanaging.
Instead of micromanaging every detail.
That's a big shift.
It is. It's a big shift from the traditional top-down leadership model.
It sounds like it takes a lot of trust to lead that way.
It does.
And Brené also talks about the dangers of weaponizing fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately feels all too common in workplaces.
It's easy to fall into that trap.
Especially during times of change or crisis.
Yes, using fear as a control tactic.
Right.
But it just breeds resentment and distrust.
And it doesn't inspire people to do their best work.
It doesn't.
So what's the alternative?
Okay, so
How do we navigate uncertainty as leaders without resorting to those fear-based tactics?
Brené suggests a few things.
Okay.
Being radically transparent,
Okay.
acknowledging what you don't know,
Okay.
and creating space for people to process their emotions.
So it's about modeling that vulnerability yourself
Exactly.
instead of pretending you have all the answers.
Yes, and creating that sense of psychological safety
Yes.
where people feel comfortable speaking up and sharing their concerns.
Which again comes back to rumbling with vulnerability.
It does.
Right.
Normalizing the fact that we don't always have it all figured out.
We're all human.
We are. And Brené talks about the importance of rest, play, and recovery.
Play, I'm not sure I've ever associated play with work.
I know it might sound counterintuitive,
It does.
but Brené's research shows that play is essential for creativity, innovation, and well-being.
Interesting.
It's about giving ourselves permission to step away from the grind.
And recharge.
And recharge, and leaders need to model that.
Set those boundaries.
Set those boundaries, encourage their teams to do the same.
It sounds like so much of Brené's advice boils down to remembering that people are humans,
Yes.
not machines.
You got it.
It's about recognizing that we all have emotions, needs, and vulnerabilities.
And creating workplaces where those things are valued and respected.
Leading with empathy, compassion, and genuine connection.
Exactly. And she doesn't just talk about it abstractly.
Right.
She gives practical examples and strategies.
One of the stories that really stuck with me was the one about the young CEO who thought vulnerability meant oversharing
Well, that's a classic example
with his employees.
of good intentions gone wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Brené's advice to that CEO was brilliant.
What does she say?
She explained that it's not about dumping your emotional baggage on others.
Right.
It's about being authentic, setting boundaries,
Yes.
and being mindful of the context
The context of the relationship.
of your relationship.
Yeah.
And remembering that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness.
It's the foundation for building trust, courage, and connection.
And it's something we can all develop.
We can with practice and intention.
Now, along with vulnerability, Brené talks about the power of joy and recognition
Yes.
in the workplace.
Celebrating the wins, big and small.
It makes me think about the importance of gratitude.
Gratitude is so powerful.
It is.
It's an antidote to cynicism and negativity.
And it's a choice we can make.
It is, regardless of our circumstances.
It's amazing to see how all these pieces fit together.
They do.
Vulnerability, courage, values, trust, power, joy, gratitude.
They all contribute to creating a more daring and effective leadership style.
And they all require our ongoing attention and effort.
They do. Daring leadership is a journey, not a destination.
But it's a journey worth taking.
It is.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored those core principles of daring leadership, from vulnerability and values to trust and the power of storytelling.
And we've looked at how to move away from armored leadership
Yes.
and embrace a more courageous, authentic way of being.
But before we move on to the final part,
Yes,
I'd love to know what's standing out for you so far.
that's a great question.
What's resonating with your own experiences and goals? One thing that really stands out for me is how Brené gives us all these tangible tools, like that readiness checklist she has for giving feedback.
Oh, yeah.
It's so practical.
I love that checklist.
Yeah.
What I think is so fascinating about it
What?
is how much emphasis she
Yeah.
puts on intention and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about delivering the message.
Right.
It's about how you show up
Yeah.
in a way that's aligned with your values.
It's those small details that make such a difference.
Yeah.
Like sitting next to someone when giving feedback,
Oh, I love that.
not across from them.
Yeah, instead of across a table from them.
Totally changes the dynamic.
It does.
And Brené also talks about the importance of holding people accountable without shaming or blaming them.
Right. Which is a tricky balance
It is.
to strike.
How do you do that?
Well, she gives some great examples
It's okay.
of how to do it well.
Okay.
And she also talks about how to receive feedback,
Ooh.
which can be really tough,
It can.
especially if it's not delivered skillfully.
It's so easy to get defensive
It is.
or just shut down completely when
Yeah.
you feel attacked.
Brené's advice is to find a value-supporting behavior
Okay.
or a piece of self-talk
Oh.
to help you stay grounded.
Okay.
Something like repeating to yourself, I'm brave enough to listen.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's a great tip.
it is.
And it reminds me of another point she makes, operationalizing your values.
Yes.
It's not enough to just talk about them.
No,
We have to live them,
we have to embody them.
embody them, yes.
And that means getting specific about what they look like in action.
Okay.
What are the behaviors and skills that support them? Like assuming positive intent.
Which sounds great in theory,
It does.
but it requires a lot of work
Yes, and skill development.
to put into practice.
Yeah.
It's like setting boundaries and believing that people are doing their best even when it's hard.
Yeah, it's a practice.
It is.
It's not something we just automatically do.
And Brené walks the talk.
She does.
She shares how her team created a whole new performance management system
Wow.
based on trust, vulnerability, and peer feedback.
That's amazing.
Such a powerful example
That is.
of how we can create more courageous and compassionate workplaces.
I agree.
I'm also fascinated by how Brené explores the topic of shame.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a powerful emotion.
It is.
and one that's often ignored in the workplace.
What I appreciate is that Brené doesn't frame shame as something to be avoided.
Right.
It's part of being human.
It is.
It's about developing shame resilience.
Yes, that ability to move through shame without compromising your values.
Exactly. And she offers some great strategies,
Mm.
like recognizing your shame triggers,
Okay.
practicing self-compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and reaching out for connection.
Remember that story she tells
Which one?
about the canceled flight
Oh, yeah.
and her daughter's soccer game?
I love that story.
It brings shame resilience to life.
It does.
It reminds us that we all experience shame,
Yeah.
and it's okay to ask for support
It's okay to reach out.
when we need it.
Exactly. And shame can't survive empathy.
Wow, I like that.
When we connect with each other from a place of understanding and compassion,
Yeah.
shame loses its power.
And connection requires emotional literacy, which
Yeah.
is another skill Brené emphasizes.
It's so important.
Being able to recognize and name your own emotions.
It's crucial for daring leadership.
It is.
If you can't understand your own emotions,
Right.
how can you understand and empathize with others?
Exactly. And it's essential for navigating conflict, building trust, and making sound decisions.
It is.
Along with emotional literacy, Brené also talks about the importance of practicing calm. Yes.
Creating perspective and mindfulness
Uh-huh.
while managing your emotional reactivity.
Such a valuable skill,
It is.
especially in today's world.
It's about taking a deep breath,
Yes.
slowing down, and
Right.
responding thoughtfully.
Instead of reacting impulsively.
Yes. And Brené points out that calm is contagious.
It's just like anxiety is contagious.
So by practicing calm ourselves,
Yes.
we can create a more peaceful and productive environment
For everyone around us.
for everyone.
Mm.
Finally, Brené reminds us to embrace the messy middle
the messy middle?
of daring leadership.
I love that.
It's not a linear path.
No,
There are going to be ups and downs.
there will be.
It's about being willing to rumble with vulnerability,
Yes.
make mistakes,
Uh-huh.
learn,
Keep showing up.
keep showing up.
Yeah,
It's about having the courage to be imperfect.
that's it.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Dare to Lead,
Yeah.
what are you taking away from it?
For me, it's that daring leadership is not about perfection. Okay.
It's about bravery.
Bravery.
Yeah, choosing courage over comfort, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
And creating a world where everyone feels safe to be their authentic selves.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
What about you? What resonated with you?
It's the emphasis on operationalizing our values.
Okay.
It's not enough to just talk about them.
Right.
We have to live them.
Live them.
And that means getting clear on what behaviors support our values
Mhm.
and holding ourselves accountable every day.
I love that. And I think it's a great challenge for all of us.
It is.
As we continue on this journey of daring leadership.
It's a journey.
It is a journey.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to go it alone.
No.
Connect with others who are on this path.
Yes.
Build the supportive relationships
Uh-huh.
and keep practicing these skills.
I love it.
Daring leadership is a lifelong pursuit,
It is.
but it's so worth the effort.
It is.
If you're looking for more from Brené Brown, be sure to check out the Dare to Lead Hub on her website.
Great resource.
It is
Lots of great stuff there.
full of tools and inspiration.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Dare to Lead.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and keep rumbling.
Keep rumbling.